What's up, everyone? I'm here. We got a very awesome guest today, a guy who knows his stuff. We got a great person in, the background of college wrestling, youth wrestling, high school wrestling, Mr. Zach Bridson, Prophecy RTC founder and owner. Zach, how you doing, man?
Good, Max. Thanks for having me on, man. Excited to help, continue to just get the word out and continue to build this area, man. I think there's a lot of good things happening in New England, especially, I'd say, since the beginning or the end of COVID. Especially, there seems to be a big rise in just people having a little bit of urgency to kind of make their mark, whether it be media, whether it be through, development. I think we have some really solid college programs in the Division III realm roaming around New England right now. So just a lot of good things happening, man. I think the depth's rising and, just the outlets. The more outlets we have, I think the more opportunities there are,
Of course, that's why, I'm trying to give, people like you, you're a great example, college coach, club coach, you deserve a platform to speak on, grow your, what you do, grow the sport in the region. So, and I agree, after COVID, I feel like everyone really ramped it up, it definitely was just being away from the mat for everyone,
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, people, we wanted to see some action. Everyone was pretty eager to, and I think across the country, things were a little unorthodox at that time. Not to go back into that time, but things were unorthodox, and I think if you were figuring things out then, you're in a pretty good situation now.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Dude, it definitely felt like just put a whole pause on everything. But, like you said, let's not go back into that time, where we're getting further and further away from it,
100%.
luckily.
100%.
So let's, start this talking about your wrestling career back at Timberlane, New Hampshire, one of the most historic programs in the whole entire New England region. But, and even before that, when did you first step on the mat?
So I've been around like martial arts my entire life. My dad was, he was practicing martial arts when I was growing up. So, I remember him coming home through the doors and like having, gashes in his mouth or, a little black eye or, a good story to tell. And I just was so intrigued by it. And so fortunately, and, there's no such thing as coincidence in my opinion, I was born into the Timberlane district. And at that time we were firing off on all cylinders. I think when I first started wrestling, the program over at Timberlane had won something like 20 high school state titles in a row. So the hype out there
was the only rival for that record in New England,
Yeah, and I think it's somewhere up in the nation's top 5. It's a pretty cool streak. So just being a part of that, that community growing up, I think no matter what, you ended up putting on a pair of wrestling shoes at some point, So I started wrestling in 5th grade, and then 6th grade is when I really started to commit myself to the grind. I had been playing a couple other sports, but pretty quickly figured out, my love for the game, and that I was willing to give up my other sports in order to go pursue, becoming a Division I athlete. And it was always just something that I wanted out of myself. I wanted to perform at the highest level, not necessarily knowing what it looked like or knowing what it took to get there, but just trusting the process and, tying my shoes on every day and putting in the best repetitions I could. And so just being at a program like Timberlane and having, as many mentors around me as I did. And then I was in a situation where, when Matt Smith had returned back from college, I was one of his first students that was really in the game full time. And, I was already traveling across the country and building out my network. And so then that just kind of allowed me to continue to do that with even more, I'd say even more confidence and just, knowing that at that time, we had a support system that could allow you to see things nationwide, and from there, you know, you could kind of make out what you wanted to make of it, you know. So that's when it all really started. It was about 5th, 6th grade. 6th grade, I really started committing to the grind, and then, you know, I mean, my middle school program at that time, I was a part of a team that had I think it was like 130 kids, you know, year in, year out.
Middle school?
Yeah, it was massive. I mean, you'd go to the wrestling practice after school, and it would be every single kid from, you know, you'd have the best athletes from 6th, 7th, 8th grade all just hanging.
That program still around? Do you know?
That program's still around. I believe Tyler Fitzpatrick's running the helm, and I know Tim Brown's heavily involved. He's also one of the assistant principals over at Timberlane. So I don't know if there's conflict of interest with all that, but in terms of like him being head coach or whatever, but I do know that Tyler Fitzpatrick's very involved, and that program's, I think, reviving itself. They're kind of in like a rebuilding era, which from the outside looking in, I do like to see, you know, because it is near and dear to my heart. You know, I do always have Timberlane in the back of my mind, and I do want, you know, so yeah. That program, I'd still say sitting around, like, I'd say, you know, I haven't been in there in years, but I'd say there's probably well over 75 kids in that program. It's a great feeder program, and they do a good job, you know, breaking down the fundamentals. And so you know, I mean, when I was in middle school, we had myself, you know, Nate Lawrence, who were both on the cusp of being nationally ranked throughout high school. You had Alex Smith, who wrestled at West Point, good friend of mine. You know, Matt Morris, who was, you know, the best of the best growing up in youth wrestling. I mean, he didn't lose. His brothers are Shay and Aiden Morris, who wrestle at Haverhill.
I was wondering if there was a connection there.
Here is, yep. And so his dad was one of the major ambassadors for that Haverhill community growing up, and they moved over to the Timberlane district, and you know, Matt wrestled there. And then we had, you know, just kids that were in the mix. Ben Tammany, he was a, you know, Super 32 place winner, Beast of the East place winner. I think, I want to say out of the 2011 team, I want to say 7 or 8 of those kids went on to wrestle in college. So out of 14 roster spots, you had, you know, 2 or 3 go D1, and a lot of them had the potentiality to go D1 as well, but they just, you know, community college route, you know, Iowa Lakes route, stuff like that. So we had a couple kids go out there just to boost the GPA and get themselves into a better situation. But I think it was a cool thing to be a part of, man. Everyone fed off each other's success, and it was like you grew up with each other. So you're like, oh, you know, Joe Schmo's doing it, why can't I? You know, and so it just kind of started that trickle effect where we're all feeding off of one another, we're all living the right lifestyle. You know, we basically, from November till March, you know, a lot of us, even after dual meets, would have our little ice cream parties, and, you know, we'd have that one cheat meal a week, and we hold each other accountable, and we'd go in Thursday, get our morning run-in, start cutting our weight, getting ready for Saturday, and, you know, just a lot of camaraderie, a lot of family. And I think you need those cornerstones in order to run a program that is successful on that level, you know, year in, year out, you know, create sustainability. Yeah. So it was cool, man. I mean, we would just, you know, like I said, firing off all cylinders. There was a lot of good energy coming in the area. You know, you had the legends before us. I mean, my captain alone, this kid, Dave Clement, was a 3-time state champ, you know, and then this kid, Brian Nickel, was a 2-time New England finalist. Like, you just had hitters up and down, you know, no matter what. You asked the kid what his accolade was, what his best, and it was something pretty special. So, you know, you had a lot of good influences from everywhere. I think there was even one year, you know, Cam Sullivan was a returning New England finalist, and his senior year had struggled to make the lineup. You know, he ended up putting together a great senior campaign, won a state championship, but that was just the depth that we were dealing with at Timberlane. You know, you had kids like Matt Morris, Alex Smith, you know, even our second stringers were just gritty kids, constantly winning state championships.
Your JV to a varsity tournament, and they'd place top 3, you know?
Exactly. We had another kid, Andrew Tanner, who didn't make the lineup until his senior year, and he took 4th in New England, you know? So, and that was off a cross-wrist tilt. You know, I'll go out there and I'll say that. He had a great 2-on-1 roll through, and he took care of business with it. And it was just amazing to see that. And then my senior year, so 8th grade was pretty cool. In New York, you can wrestle on varsity in 8th grade. And so I wasn't allowed to wrestle for Timberlane or score points for Timberlane, but I was allowed to represent my middle school at Eastern States Classic when I was in 8th
Was
grade.
that the only tournament that Timberlane like went to that you were allowed to participate at them with?
Yeah, and so that was my 8th grade year, and so going into that, I didn't get to train with the team or anything just because of legality and stuff like that. But I was able to go compete. I took 4th place there. I lost to this kid Bob Dierna. And so that was like my first, like, okay, cool, I can compete at this stage. I can wrestle at this level. I can beat kids here. I had won like 9 matches in a row after losing the first round to Bobby D, who is a multi-time D3 champ. He was tough. And so from there it was like, okay, cool, like, the ball is rolling. We started really building out this camaraderie, and from there it was like the team won New England's that year. Then we won it freshman year. Then we won it sophomore year. Then junior year. Then I come into my senior year and we had 4 in a row. And my senior year, if you look at the lineup on paper, I mean, was definitely not supposed to win that event. And by the grace of the wrestling gods, I mean, Mount Anthony came in and had a couple flounders happen first round, and we took advantage of the opportunity, and I'm pretty sure we won the event with 57 team points total. We had a kid at 152 come out of nowhere. Yeah.
That's really insane. That's got to be like it's pretty crazy to say that, because wasn't there that also that one year that you were there where you guys scored like an absurd amount of points like Pontigansett did recently?
Yeah, and Pontigansett I think beat our record, but we were up.
You guys were close,
We were in like the 180s or something like that. And I'm pretty sure one of our best wrestlers didn't even wrestle that year in that event. And that, I don't know if that was the year I got upset. It might have been the year I even got upset. So like there was potential to make up even more, points in that event if we really came out and pitched a perfect game. But yeah, it was cool, man. And so that senior year when we really, came together as a team, and like the unity of like just what we needed to do to make that event, make that championship happen. My senior year was we dug deep, and we had a 52-pounder avenge like 3 or 4 in-season losses and ends up placing like 5th at the New England event. And then we had another kid, Adam Corey, who was my drill partner, who silently like crept onto that New England podium a couple times and was solidified himself as like one of the Timberlane greats, who was just.
What weight was he?
Adam was the weight class above me at that time, so he snuck in at 120.
Yeah, you were a small guy, right?
Yeah, and like, my thing was I'd always want to seek out the best competition, right? And so I wanted to solidify one that we were gonna have the best lineup out there that we could, and I also wanted to ensure that like I was gonna put myself.
Weight cutter then?
Yeah, there was times like, I wrestled the majority of the year at 120, but then Montserrat was at 113 that year, and Christian was my drill partner at that time. All the praise to the kid. I love him. But I had to go wrestle him in the New England finals. Just myself. I wanted to do that, and then, but to see what he did after the fact, and like how he's now one of the biggest ambassadors for the game in New England. I mean, I have nothing but absolute most respect for that kid, and what he's continuing to do, and the doors that he's continuing to open for this community. So he's the coach over at Harvard now, and he put together an amazing college career, which was awesome to follow. And he grabbed 2 New England titles of his own. He was a 4-time finalist. So Christian was one of the best to ever do it, man. So to have the honor to be able to wrestle against him in one of those New England finals was a good deal, man. It was I think both of us really respect the fact that we were able to take on that challenge, and it was always respect, but we just knew that we were pushing each other to become the best that we could. So I went down to 13 for that. Adam got to stay at 120, where he looked great, and he snuck onto the podium, and we won the tournament. So I don't mark my words on that, scoring 57 points, but it was something low like that. Yeah,
it probably, I think Danbury won it with like 75 or something, so it was less than that, you think?
I do, yeah. I think we were so now, yeah, it makes me feel a little bit better now that you say that. Yeah,
we were 2018 or 19 when Danbury like barely won it with 75.
Yeah, so it was one of those types of years, and it was just cool to be a part of a dynasty like that.
Literally definite. It's Timberlane and Mount Anthony. Those are the 2 schools that come to mind when you think about New England wrestling, at least to me.
Yeah, and I definitely would throw Danbury in the mix. I think they got they've done such a good job the last like decade getting guys into the Division I realm, and not only guys into the D1 realm, but guys All-American, you know, and getting the job done at the Division I realm, right? That's ultimately the goal. It's cool to get guys into the big leagues, but you know, we want to perform and we want to see, you know, show everyone that New England's really solidifying themselves. So what's cool is if you look at like the wrestling belt across America, right? That stems from, you know, we'll start in Pennsylvania, or we'll start in Jersey, we'll go to Pennsylvania, goes into Ohio, Wisconsin, Indiana, Wisconsin, and furthermore, right? You start to see how that line integrates across America, and like you got Iowa in that mix, you got Nebraska in that mix. You could start that pipeline all the way in New England.
Yeah, we're right there, you know?
And so I think you're starting to see more of that, starting the trend with the rise and having more clubs and just the push, right? You need more mentors, more people that have done it at the higher level who are going to come back and be like, hey, look, you know, this is how I see it. If you want to take to it, let's do it. If not, cool. I just want to see this area grow, and I want to help kids find that opportunity within themselves, you know? So it's been, dude, the last couple of years have been really awesome. But yeah, no, I throw Danbury in that mix, and then to fall back on that a little bit, it was just really cool to be a part of that like 5-year New England championship team, because that 5th year, it's a really hard thing to do, right? Say you get a dynamite freshman class coming, you could repeat that history, right? You could have 4 or 5 really solid freshmen, 2 of them win a New England title their freshman year. And then you know what? Your team, the other guys make the podium. Your team does it, right? You have a seat in the mix. And
for the next, few years.
Right? And then you build off that. But that 5th year where you transition, all your graduate, you know, you're basically starting from scratch.
Supposed to be that rebuilding year, you know?
Right. So that was cool, man. That was a special thing to be a part of. So yeah, man, quick shout out to all the old Timberlane heads who I got to, you know,
Owls.
And the Owls Nest, and Coach Chulgin, he really did do an amazing job just kind of looking out for us as high school athletes, you know, making sure his high school program was the best it could be, and there's no denying it, right? You know, so and then everything that we got to do in the off season, we were all over at Smitty's barn at that point, so the barn played a huge role in what we were able to accomplish as, you know, as a collective, and you can't deny that either. So there was a lot of key things that came into play that really allowed us to become who we were in the game, you know. Yeah. And then we would go seek out, like, I mean, there was a year we wrestled Blair Academy, and I think up until the last 3 or 4
I remember that. I remember you mentioned that at least.
It was like a 38-29 dual meet, you know. It was
crazy. It was that close, you know.
What's
like,
wild
is school from New England, keeping it that close, you know.
Right, and that was the year I won New England's, or won Beast of the East, and I beat Hobleck in the finals. So that was the Blair kid. Yeah. And what's funny about that is he actually pinned me in the dual meet. So if you take away that 12-point slide,
first,
that could be a 9-point slide right there.
Which came first, your win over him or his over you?
Dude, he had beaten me 3 times, and then I beat him in the Beast of these finals, and then he got me again.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I got him again. So I changed the script a little bit, but he beat me in the blood round twice at nationals. You know, those were stingers. Yeah. And then when I got him in the Beast finals, it was like all the pressure's off. And then I was whooping him in the dual meet, and he actually caught me in overtime and stuck me. So it was just kind of like, you know, he was my parallel. He was my guy, you know, for the cap to him. He definitely pushed me to be a better man, and I still stay in touch with him a good bit. You know, that's one thing I've definitely been able to do through wrestling is extend my network. And, you know, a lot of my good friends have come through the game of wrestling, whether they be from New England or across the country, you know.
Exactly. You know, all these national tournaments, it gives, you know, the kids and all these athletes and coaches the opportunity to make these connections, you know, with someone, you know, in a different time zone, or, you know, just like 2 hours away or something, you know.
Yeah, I call it soul family. You know, there's you know, you have family beyond your vessel, and I think when you interact with certain souls, you're like, I know you.
Yeah, I like this one, you know, like, they're cool.
Yeah, exactly. So
you mentioned one of your goals, I think, you know, it was like pushing yourself to become a D1 wrestler. And that's something you eventually accomplished, correct?
Yeah, yep. So I was able to win 4 divisional state titles in high school. I was, you know, I achieved that number one in the rankings, you know, number 1 in the rankings across the country. I achieved that status at one point, and then won a Beast title. And multi-time All-American in high school. So yeah, man, really just was able to put together a good high school resume, but went to the Division I realm and had some serious expectations for myself to perform. Unfortunately, I got a really strange injury going out of high school, and it all stemmed from getting teeth removed, right? And so I got these teeth removed, these molars here, and when that happened, I didn't give myself proper time to recover, in my opinion. So bang, I'm wrestling, hit an underhook on a kid. As I slip it, he bites down on the overhook, and so my elbow goes that way, right? And so that's an ulnar collateral tear, or UCL, Tommy John kind of thing. And it was a partial tear, so it wasn't enough to get Tommy John surgery, but it was enough to throw off my whole biomechanical flow. And I ended up getting a brachial plexus injury in my left shoulder, so that's a nerve damage injury. Nerve stretched out about half an inch. So like anytime I'd get to a leg attack, a lot of people have gotten them before, but you get like a stinger, a shockwave through your whole vessel. I was getting those, pretty consistently throughout practice, like 4 or 5 times a practice, to where like I couldn't even really hold my body upright, and just shocked. My body was shocked, So there was something more that was going on, and unfortunately had to kind of just play this game in my wrestling career where I was like staying in shape but not competing all the time. I had an electricity factor that the coaches loved. I could put people on their back and pin them, and I'd go out and no matter what, you know what to expect out of me. And that was that I was going to put everything I had into whatever it was. I never would let myself take repetitions off, even during times where you'd probably be like, yo, chill, it's okay to relax a little bit. I'd be like, yeah, you got to get it.
Yeah, gotta go hard.
Right. So, as you get older, you start to figure out like how to train a little bit more efficiently. But, during that time, you're just like, you're bad out of hell. You're trying to get the job done, and you want to, prove it to yourself, prove it to your family. So yeah, man, got that injury and just kind of just played this game in college where I was like trying to stay a little bit in shape at all times if my name was ever called. And they threw me out at SoCons, and it was like throwing a lead dog out to battle. It sucked, and the coaches all empathized with the situation. And so being a full ride recipient, I chose to go to my coaches, and I easily could have. When you get an injury on a full ride, the NCAA honors that, but I felt as though there was more that could be done. So I took my scholarship and I gave it back to the school after 2 years. But looking at the greater, right? It's never been about me. It's always been about what can I be a part of, And so I think that's the biggest thing. And if I end up rising, if I become the cream of that crop, cool, right? I'm here to take that. I'm here to take on that responsibility. I feel as though I can be honorable in that sense. I'm not going to ever let it get to my head. I'm never going to get too arrogant with myself. There was definitely times in high school where, I got a bit into myself, but I think that comes with the territory.
It does,
So, but I always had this truer sense to myself where I was like, no, you know what? It's way more than just me, right? It's way more than just, and there's been giants that have come before. And so I used wrestling as like a way to seek out history, right? To me, wrestling is the best reflection of history. I mean, you're dealing with a history of the DNA, like it's been at the beginning of who we are as mankind. And so it's an extremely amazing art in that sense. And when you can display the fight, when you can display the technique, when you can display the power, the athleticism, all those things, I truly feel like I'm looking at a piece of history. I'm looking at the history of that human's DNA, their lineage, their grandparents, their ancestors, and so there's been people that have come before us, and there's going to be a hell of a lot that come after us, so never make it too much about yourself, right? Just instead see how you are, how you're supposed to carry the torch and in what light you're supposed to, and see where it takes you, and see what kind of ambassador you can be. And so that's where I really got real with myself. And I was like, look, dude, my career is not going the way I wanted to. I transferred to Springfield. I gave it an effort. And unfortunately, like just with where my mind was at, with where my body was at, it just didn't make sense for me to stay in school. I wrestled at the Doug Parker, which was, a good Division III tournament. I had a good time over there. I wrestled, I think it was B-Walk, who was an All-American that year, and had a good match with him, and, beat him up a good bit, gave myself some confidence that, I knew I could win a national title that year. But a couple months later, it came to the point where I was like, dude, I just want to draw back to, like, healing myself right now. And that's essentially what I went on. So my healing journey, I call it my healing journey, or my cry out to the universe, that started at, like, 21, 22 years old, upon finishing up my wrestling career. So right upon that injury, went to Springfield, decided that Springfield wasn't a good fit, and I now need to just go focus on getting healthy, and circle to where I'm at now makes a ton of sense, So running the club and the camps and doing all what I'm doing now, man, I just kind of had to submit. I submit to the flow, man. That's what I say. And I think whatever you call it, God, the universe, your higher power, there's something else out there that has a coding for you, and I think it's worth tapping into and allowing it to kind of steer you, whichever way it's supposed to. You stay righteous with yourself, do the right things, but ultimately, like, you're going to end up where you're supposed to. And so I think all that happened for me to just build perspective so that I could come back and be the most efficient coach that I am, that I can be in this game. And so it's led me to now building up the youth community, putting a major emphasis on that, wanting world champion, wanting to produce, Division I All-American, Division I national champ. I think that comes with the territory of wanting world champion. So my goal is to set up here. And I try to bring in the right people in order to accomplish that. And then it was cool to be like, okay, now, like, I'm ready to go back into the Division III game, coach up a college program, try to make, more opportunity here in New England. And then camp systems, I think camps, right? Overnight camps, camps where we're in the woods, right? What helped save me was getting back to the mountains and, retraining my vessel out there. And so once I found that, I was like, word, I need to now incorporate this into wrestling. How do we, and if you look at, like, Dagestan, right, where you got the best wrestlers in the world, they're hiking twice a week and wrestling, 4. Mm-hmm. It's how they live their life. They're in the mountains. It's a very simple life, very built off community, built off family. They all eat together. They all, share, good, everything you do with, in those cultures is together. And so I think that's what I wanted to recreate over here, or try to create something like that over here.
Is it one of your coaches from around that area, or you had someone?
Yeah. So I got Nodir Safarov, who's from Uzbekistan, and he's originally from Uzbekistan. Yeah, exactly. So Uzbekistan claimed independency in 1991. Yeah. So they were part of the USSR up until then. And so his father was a part of the USSR system, and then his grandfather was a part of the USSR system. His wife's grandfather and his wife's dad, and then his wife's a Taekwondo specialist. So it's like everyone over there is trained in something, and they specialize in it. And then it's cool to see how, like, it's like, yeah, man, it's just, it's what we do. We all grapple. You have your weddings, you have your ceremonies, whatever it is, you're wrestling. Everyone's like, just showing technique and messing around with each other. So having him come over here just even more kind of solidified everything that I was doing, and was like, cool, law of attraction at this point, right? There's a reason why I'm lining up with this guy, and so that he can, really kind of reinforce everything that I'm trying to create over here. And it's been awesome, man. He's an amazing human being. So he competes at Asian Games in 11 days.
Yeah.
So he had the world team spot if he wanted that. He decided to give that up to Abdulayev, I think his name is, and he decided to take the spot for Asian Games at 57 kilos. So he'll be back, I want to say mid-October, and he'll be back full-time pretty much, bringing his family over. So
I'll definitely have to, pull up to Prosty sometime, see him, see if I can.
He'll be around, brother. He'll be around.
Yeah. So, it's funny, like you mentioned, whether it's God, fate, destiny, whatever, you basically saying you think you were meant to coach, right?
Yeah.
So it's almost like the injury just kind of like got you there sooner, almost, because who knows, if you'd still be competing right now, maybe, if you're
Absolutely.
better than a coach.
It's funny you say that because I've considered even going back and putting one last hack at it, So if it was up to me, bro, I'd still be out there competing for a world team spot, even seeing some of these guys like Darian Cruz, right? I got a good head to head over him, and he was the 3 seed at the world championships this past year. So,
Yeah.
just like seeing those things, but that's my own ego, and I'm able to disassociate from that and really, see it for what it is. It's more the soul in me who likes to fight. I think it's near and dear to. I think fighting stands next to the truth in life. The truth being, your connection with spirit. I just think it's a reflection. It's like of who you are at the core. So there's part of me that, yeah, man, I wish I could get a couple more hacks at it, and I'd still do consider it. I trained pretty hard this summer. Body feels good. Shoulders still a little, there's times where it flares up. So, just playing that game, I don't know if I want to go back into like where I was at, with having to repair myself and stuff. So, in a pretty good space with everything right now. Coaching up the college team. We got season starting. We get the eight practices. So it's hands are full, man. Hands are definitely full. But like one person who definitely does it and he does it right is I'll give him a little shout out, is Chance Marsteller, and it's pretty cool to see Chance do it because
right?
Yeah.
Trains.
Chance is a good friend of mine, but and not to go there, but like he just, dude, it's impressive to see what he does. Like he trains 2 times a day. He runs his college.
His whole story is impressive,
Story. I mean, he coaches Alvernia College, which is a D3 program. No one really knows that. He runs his club out of there, and I mean, the kid is working out twice a day in New York City, NJRTC, or over the NYRTC. So, I mean, he's driving 3 hours a day, running 3 practices, and training himself. So, and that's day in, day out. Like he doesn't miss a lick.
Yeah.
So,
dedication.
Oh, it's insane. It's insane. So, seeing guys like that do it, it does give a little bit of inspiration. Like, hey, you could go get another competition in. But at the same time, man, I'm in a really good situation with myself, and who knows? Maybe I go throw one last hack at it.
Yeah.
Maybe November. Been thinking about it a little bit, but
you want a spot at the showcase, man? We could sneak you in there.
Nah, we'll make that about the kids.
Yeah, you don't need to show them up,
Not about the kids. Nah, but it's good, man. It's all fun. It's all, try to keep the energy super light, but, pick it up, the intensity when we need to, and really like build firm perspective in what it takes to be, a world champion. I think you get to be, I've been able to link up with people who are starting to, who have done it at that level, right? Like one of my big mentors is Volgar Ruja, and that's Vito's father. He's coming up October 6th, and just being able to reference, anything to him, like, hey, what's this look like? What's this supposed to look like? What kind of techniques are you running? How should I structure my room? How much live should we be doing? How many times a day should we be training? All that stuff has, they call it the system, and the system's like this quote unquote, like archaic file, right? It's like a hidden, it's like you can only access it through here, but once you get access to it, it's like a part of your mind that's like has existed since the beginning of time, and it's this file that's full of wrestling knowledge and a guaranteed system that's gonna get you success at the highest level. And so the USSR kind of created it, and then you've had countries like Azerbaijan, Uzbekistan, Dagestan's part of Russia, but they have their own part of the system. Mongolia, Kyrgyzstan, all these, they have little deviations of it. And so it's cool because it all started with the system. And so that's one thing I've been able to receive from these, these elders, right? Like Volgar and some of these older heads that I've been in the game with now. They've kind of given me the system, right? And now I'm able to take my mind and what I've experienced and my experiences.
I imagine,
So it's been really cool in that sense too. But there is a way to do it, and there is, a system that you can tap into that's going to give you a certain level of success at the highest level. And that's what I'm here to implement, now with the American way. And America's doing an amazing job
Yeah.
over, bro. I mean, our
Senior World Championships just happened, and U.S. won the team title for men.
Absolutely. And I think that's a testament to just everything we're doing over here as a collective. I think that there's things to draw back from, but I also think there's some really good things that are happening in our system that are certainly showing. So yeah, just like how the performance that we saw at the World Championships.
Yeah, dude. Oh, I'm curious though. We're talking about worlds and all that. What are your thoughts on Greco?
I love training Greco. I mean, Greco is the most popular across the world. It's just not the most supported. It's like Greco is one of the more other countries love Greco. Absolutely love Greco, and their Greco athletes are like of their most prestige, but then when you get to like the nitty gritty and you get to like that upper echelon type wrestling fan, it's freestyle takes the cake, and that's where you really get behind your country, and it's cool. I'm referencing a couple big names that are just kind of in my circle right now, but another person who I talk to pretty regularly out of Jersey is Anthony Ashnault, right? And so Ash was at
the Mobbin Classic, right?
Yeah, and he was at the World Championships, and so I got to get some good just insight as to what he experienced out there, just as a spectator, as a training partner, as an athlete, making their way through the system, or here in America, and it was just really cool to hear what he had to say. Obviously he had a good amount to say, but some of the things that stuck out to me from a spectator standpoint was just how you'll go to the World Championships, and he's like, when you're talking about pinnacle, you put that, within the top 3, right? But he's like, you only have about 3,000 people there in the crowd. You don't have, it's not jam-packed. It's not going to the World Series or going to the Super Bowl or anything like that, right? Even the NCAA tournament here in America is probably the pinnacle for wrestling in terms of environment, right? You're talking over 15,000 fans. It's jam-packed. It's it's just the energy in that building is so cutthroat, but he said what's cool is when you go to the World Championships, it's a lot more intimate. And so you have the whole Iran section, right? You have the Japanese section, you have the India section, you have Russia's section, every other country further on. And he said, so when their athletes are competing, everybody is involved, everybody's invested, everybody's up, and they're treating it as if it's their own child. And so that's I think that was one of my major takeaways, is if you're gonna go do it at the highest level, you do have to have that type of family that is far extended beyond your immediate family, people who are willing to truly move mountains for you, that are not blood related, but they're from the same region, so the DNA runs deep, right? And they're willing to fight for that athlete as if it is their own. And because of that, the athlete is willing to go above and beyond what they think that they're even capable of, because they have all this power, this energy working through their systems,
that soul family that you referenced earlier, they're all bounded by each other's soul through each other's energy and stuff,
100%. So I think when things get pretty special when you get to that realm, and that was one of the major takeaways I took from Anthony. That's cool stuff. But to go to kind of piggyback off of all that, the NCAA championships, with that being said, is the pinnacle of wrestling environments. And so I think that when you're talking about Greco, freestyle, folk style, every style has its own specialized feature to it, right? And so the folk style system, we're the only country in the world that wrestles it, but there's something to be said about it, because now we're winning world championships at the highest level in freestyle. So I think because of the mindset that folk style develops, we're able to take that, and it's really it's a dog on a bone type mindset, and you'll see some of the foreigners kind of fade because of that. We're in their face constantly. We're a very competitive culture here in America.
Yeah.
And we like gold medals, so we're willing to kind of do whatever we need to do in order to make sure that happens, right? Whether it's you're towing the line a little bit, and so you'll see some of the foreigners, they'll even, at the highest level, yeah, they're there to fight, but the foreigners are very much so about feel and flow, right? They're about like, I got you, right? It's like, it's that type of wrestling, like, ooh, I just out slicked you off of energy.
A lot more
Whereas,
technique based, I feel,
in America, we're all about like, we'll take a square and we'll jam it through a circle, you know?
Yeah, that's a great way to put it, you know?
Yeah, we'll punch you in the face and we'll put our forehead right in your mouth in order to go find points. And if it means that you got your feelings upset because of it, so be it,
Yeah.
Like, so I think that it's cool to kind of analyze the game from the outside looking in. Greco doesn't have a ton of support here in America, but across the world it does. It's not the most fun thing to watch, and I think Greco would just kind of always stay where it's at, but you can't get rid of it because it is a style of the game that it's OG. It goes back to the beginning of times, and it's an amazing display of how to be more dominant than another human being, just utilizing your upper body, and that's how I look at it, So I think it's a great thing. I think it's a great tool. We need to have it, more involved here in America. But I think with where we see our freestyle going, that's our first goal, right? Is to continue to run the freestyle game. Our folk style is obviously where it's at, but then we can start to look at Greco a little bit more in depth as developers. And now that we're starting to find and figure out the freestyle scene.
Yeah, we got on top in freestyle. Now we need to stay on top, and then, like you said, then we could start, looking at Greco a little more in depth.
Certainly, man. That's
so,
my take on Greco.
We kind of now, kind of just major switch of tones from talking about freestyle, Greco, and folk style, all that, because I want to go back to you with coaching and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So we mentioned earlier that you're the founder and owner of Prophecy, and then you're also the head assistant at New England College.
Mm-hmm.
Which came first?
So it was funny. Like, I started, just training kids. I was at Smitty's Barn for the longest time. Most people know that. Came back from college, did all that. Started working under Matt for a good 3 or 4 years, and then come COVID. That kind of changed everything up and made me really kind of take a step back. I had spent time out on the reservation living with natives upon finishing my wrestling career. And so I got brought in by a Lakota family, which are the oldest people of this planet. And so I learned a lot about like purpose, right? What I'm here for, what I need to be here for. And it really defined itself to me that like it's the 7 generations to come and the 7 generations that have come before us. And so as a man, I need to do my best, due diligence to like really create something that is a safe environment for these kids to become themselves, an added extension to the community. There's already some good things happening with wrestling, especially, but I use wrestling as a vehicle. And so I started training kids, upon coming back, was at the barn, and then COVID came upon, and I took a big step back and was like, okay, I got to really assess where I want to go in my life, like as a human being, what I want to do, and I know that this wrestling thing can be used as a vehicle. I love the game. It gives me a lot of because I have this defined perspective, allows me to really put everything I have into the sport of wrestling. My energies are always full. I'm never burnt, because I see what life really is about. And so because of that, I'm also able to be like, this is why I do this, So it started with training kids during COVID. I had a group of 20 kids. And then that essentially turned into now what is my club, and we were just training in a little shed, actually over at Matt Morris's house. And then from there, it just kind of split off into its own little directions. And I ended up making the decision to go get my own space. My first space was over on Union Street in Lawrence. And so my goal was to, my idea behind starting, okay, if I'm going to get a space, I want to be, kind of in the mecca of, the industrial here in New England, right? And that's Lawrence, Mass, in my opinion. It's one of the, founding cities of this whole country. So 100%. So I went over, I found a nice space in a mill, one of those old mill buildings that they got over there. And we were occupied, we were fully occupied within 3 months. We had 40 kids coming in there, and that was jammed out. So I got to upgrade my space, and then this past year, um, my lease was up, and I was able to find a really nice spot over on Union Street, or Merrimack Street, across from Union Street. So Sal Lapoli, who owns Sal's Pizza, he's the uh, he's the owner of the buildings that I'm in. And what's cool is when he bought this mill, I think back in the early 90s, he bought it for $1 over there in Lawrence.
Wow.
And now it's got over, 8,000 operating businesses in it. And
Good
it's
investment then,
a solid investment. It's a solid investment. So I think he's making some good money off that building now. But no, it's cool, man. It's cool to just be a part of like a piece of little history like that. And like, he's a great man for the community. I've never personally met him, but I've heard awesome stories. And then just to kind of be involved in that project that they have going on right now, there's like a $40 million project that's going on from like where I'm at all the way over to Union Street. So you'll see Lawrence kind of reviving itself. And what's cool is like Lawrence back in the early 2000s, wasn't necessarily the most friendly place, but you look at the things that are happening there now and just the generation that's coming through the city, man. It's an amazing place to be. It's so upbeat. You got, just opportunities on every corner. They just built a football field on top of a parking garage that's open to the public, and that overlooks our whole wrestling facility. So we were talking about even doing wrestling tournaments over there. And then my leasing agent is this guy Scotty Moreau, and his kid is Scott Moreau. So it's cool. It's just, it all comes together, and they're diehard Doughboys. And then the coach who I coach with, Ray DeRosa over at New England College, he's one of the original Doughboy too. So we're all coming together, man. At some point,
that's the thing, it's separate clubs, but there's still that, everyone still works together, and that's what's important. That's what's going to grow the sport in the region, and just grow the sport in general.
Absolutely. So it was like DeRosa hit me up. He's like, kind of told me what was going on over at New England College. So this was last year. So Prophecy came first, and then New England College followed. And the goal was to, the major goal coming into that program was to get, his son, Chris DeRosa, ready to go All-American, win a national title. And so I've really committed myself to that process. And if it happens, God willing, cool. If not, we're going to just continue to build and build and build. And I think with that mindset and with the energy that we're working with over at New England College, you're starting to see things go in a really cool direction. We've had, since I've been there, John Lafferty's transferred in from Sacred Heart. Zach Soda's transferred in from Edinboro. Bo Dillon transferred in from Edinboro. Kyle Gore transferred in from Edinboro, and Chris transferred in.
I was looking at honestly the roster earlier today. I was like, wow, Bo Dillon and Kyle Gore, whoa.
Couple OGs in there. So it's cool to get those guys, kids who I've worked with for a long time who are, solidified in this area, got good names, and they're solid kids. They're really, and then just like polishing them, like showing them like, hey, this is now, right? Because manhood comes into play, right? You can be everything you are as a youth kid, but then X, Y, and Z factors in as you become an adult, right? And that can sometimes completely change up someone's trajectory for the good or for the worst, right? And so just being able to actively stay active in their lives, like every day, like, hey, I'm seeing you guys every day. It's not just like a phone call, hey, what's up, coach? It's Kyle checking in. Like, no, I get to be with Gore every day now, which I love. And it's like yesterday I even hit him up, hey, can you go run my practice for me? And he loves that. Like, he's like, yeah, absolutely, coach. Like, thank you for trusting me to take that responsibility. And he gets to go work with my youth kids. And so then 5 or 6 college guys go with him. And so now I have 20 kids in my Sunday practice, and half of them are college, half of them are high school, a quarter of them are youth or whatever, It's a percentage of them are youth. It's just cool. It's like you're just dealing with every layer of it, so the kids get to see it, be around it, feel it, understand it, ask the right questions, because I don't have to answer every question now. Now Kyle can share his experience, Bo can share his experience, Soda can share his experience, Chris, DeRosa. It's really cool. So then the high school kids, like Peter Rinkin has done an amazing job. John Del Morales, an amazing job. Like, I got a couple other, just like Nazil Florian, right? He's just a Lawrence kid who started with me 2 years ago, but he's there every single day. I can trust him. He loves working with the youth kids. Peter does an amazing job just keeping everybody involved with what he's doing and helping them have a little taste of that. And Jondell went out and was the first kid, as far as I know, from New England that's made a world team for representing a different country. You got that experience in at the World Championships, and just like taking those first steps, right? Not knowing where they're going to lead you, but being willing to be a trailblazer and then lead by example for the next generation to come, I think is ultimately like what you want to create, right? And so I'll go back real quick and then we can move on. Nodir, right? The guy who I have come in from Uzbekistan, he's like, Friday night, you go shoot hoop, yeah? He's like, you go to Lawrence, you go shoot hoop. He's like, we go wrestle. He's like, you got world champ, 60 years old. He's like, you got world champ, 30 years old. He goes, you got world medalist, 17. Everyone's at practice, right? So it's like, instead of going down and shooting hoops, we're going to wrestling practice, and we're training with our elders who are 55. They're telling us stories, right? We're training with the young guy who's in the mix right now, who's 33, and there's 20 of them, right? And they're all spitting vinegar, hitting each other hard, trying to, get competitive. And you got all the guys below that who are up and coming, right? So it's like that. It's the norm. It's casual. It's what you're supposed to be doing. And
it's crazy to me that you said, just something as simple as, going to shoot hoops is, that's wrestling is there going to shoot hoops,
what they do. And then after the fact, it's like, okay, let's go to babushkas or, and we go eat food. They have a fully cooked meal. The babushka brings in all the wrestlers, all your teammates. You got 10 of yous, you're eating crackers, Urbeck, you're there all night. You're not going out partying. You're not going to the clubs. You're not, I'm saying that's from let's draw back a little bit to like high school kids, right? They're staying focused, man. They're staying focused on their community, like in different, these different places, right? And I just like what that culture creates, because it shows you what you're truly here for,
There's so many distractions nowadays, especially for the high school kids.
100%. And even social media, right? Even just like simple, wasting too much time on just being on your phone when you could be doing real things that are going to help separate you from the rest of the pack, so yeah, man, just being able to like casually build that culture, that's everything I want to. And then like bring guys like Anthony Ashnault around, Chance Marstella around, Vulgar around, Nodir around. Like I want these kids to think it's pretty casual to be around that type of athlete, because we want to create that, and we don't want to be shell-shocked by it when we get there. There's a prestige and a respect to it, right? It's like a sensei type feel when they're in the room, and you come with respect. You don't speak much. There's a very proper way to enter my room, and people who know that can feel it. People who have been there will attest to that. But there's also a lot of freedom if you do it right. There's a lot of like, yes, you get it, perfect, good job. Now go be yourself, right? And so being around these types of guys, I think helps reinforce that even more, where like discipline's the ultimate form of freedom. You just stay locked in, and you see what it's like, and then they're not getting shell-shocked when they go to these higher level events. I think Jondell got a little bit of a wake-up call at Worlds, but like he was like ready for it at the same time. Like you have to be ready to go get that wake-up call, and he was like, we had some really good long talks after that. But I think at first he was like, cool, I get to go to the World Championships. And then he goes out there and he wins his first match. And then, unfortunately loses the next two. But like he comes back and I can feel it in him. He's like, I wanted that win, like I wanted, like, I'm like, good, this is what I want out of you, dude. Like now, bro, you're top 10 in the world if you put yourself in the right situation,
Crazy everything he's done. It's amazing, things he's done, and I'm sure you've played a part in helping him out and everything. So props to you, man.
He trains a lot of freestyle with me, and he's been at the barn since the beginning. So I can't take credit for all of it, but he Yondell and I are really tight. Peter and I are really tight. I got a couple of guys, my youth crew that I'm with day in, day out. We hike the mountains together. We go, if we're not hiking the mountains at least twice a month or once a month, we're going and finding a tournament to go compete at across the country. And we keep it really tight knit. We don't you know, and purified too. Like there's a proper way to, like, these kids need to be fed the right nutrients, you know, and I'm not talking just food, I'm talking like thought, I'm talking,
Yeah,
you
food
know,
for the mind, you know.
absolutely, bro. And so just trying to really like hone in on that. Because in like Dagestan, right, or like Russia, whatever, Chechnya, like they you get dropped off at wrestling. They go to school till they're 13 years old, right, and then they're done. And then from there, like, mom and dad still have to go to work. So these kids in that part of the world, unfortunately, either become like part of a terrorist organization. I don't want to say all in all senses, but it can, right? Or they could become fighters, or they could go to war, or they could go get involved with the wrong thing, drug dealing, right? That's big out there too. Or they go to wrestling practice and they're raised by their mentor, you know? And the mentor is the mentor, right? It's not just your wrestling coach. You're with your wrestling coach for the entirety of the day. And so, like, you have wrestling schools out there that have, you know, Satiev comes from, Sadulayev comes from, like all the greats, Khabib, like you, and like those schools, you go to that school and it's like very prestigious, and like the same mentors that trained Satiev are training today's world champion, you know, and then you get a couple more mentors in that mix, and so it's like there's that true hierarchy of having your elders and like your ancestors involved in what you're doing.
The guy from Bahrain, right?
Yeah, about
He trains at didn't he train at Sagilev's academy? That's
Yep.
like the thing, you know, the student has surpassed the master finally.
Brilliance, man. It's brilliance. And like, yeah, man. And like, so that's just the culture I'm trying to build, man. You're never too young to win, you know. And like, to add to that, like, I want to create something here in this region that like has prestige like that, where like you're like, wow, like many world medalists, many world champion, many Olympic champion. Like, if it goes in that direction, cool. I know that I can only start it, right? Because it takes a long time for those things to happen, and so I can only start it, and then I have to find the right person to hand it off to, and then from there hand it off to them. It's never been about me. It's just about creating a school that is going to ensure that level of success, you know. And so like the mentor approach is huge.
So let me ask you this then: where do you see Prophecy in 5 years, with, you know, this class of Yandel and Peter, you know, in college, and you have your youth group that you're talking about coming up? You think?
Yeah, I got a super solid youth group. Yeah, it's 5 years, man. It's hard to tell, right? I don't necessarily want to put an expectation on it, because at the end of the day, it does come down to like the effort and energy I'm putting into it with the kids and getting them like to that level. Like it takes, you know, so I it's hard to tell, but with the things that they're doing now, you know, Peter being an undefeated New England champion as a freshman, and doing what he did, and then, you know, Jandel making a world team, and then, you know, I got a little guy, Mateo Montanero, who went.
Oh, I've heard. Yeah, I've seen you post about him.
You know, he's been with me every single day since the beginning. He's, you know, won the Trinity this past year, and I think he's the youngest kid to win a Trinity award ever from New England, maybe one of two people, the first kid from Massachusetts to ever do it. So there's just some things that are happening that are just kind of like indicators of like, hey, if we keep doing what we're doing, we're gonna end up in a situation where like we're changing the manifold over here, and like the script's gonna be written a little bit differently, you know. And so that's my goal, man. Like, I don't want to cap these kids, and I don't want to like, nor sell them short of what it looks like, right? I don't want to cap them or sell them short. So I'm going to be as real as I can be in what it takes to be the best, but also like, hey, we can do this if you really want to do this. And like, nothing I did, nothing I accomplished as a wrestler will ever interfere with what I want out of this community. You know, I did what I did, and it got me to where I got to. Probably just built me enough credibility to start a gym. You know, sick, dope, I like that, right? And a good gym at that, right, with the right people. And now it's about taking this crop and like really bringing them to that world level. You know, we do, like, we're all extensions of one another, and so people say, you know, don't live vicariously through them or this or that. And it's like, yeah, no, you don't want to, you know, allow them to dictate your emotions, but you do, like, live through your people, like, and live with your people.
Yeah, live it, like, feel what they feel, you know, just don't take it to the extreme, you know?
Yeah. And I don't know, I'll do some deep dives right now. Like Kenny Anderson, he was You know, he's a 3-time NCAA champ out of Wartburg, RIP, good friend of mine from Billerica, Massachusetts. Kenny was an amazing ambassador in terms of like, anytime I talked to him about what he experienced on the mat, it felt like I was with him on the mat, you know? And like, I think that's part of it too, is like to allow people to live through your story and like feel your story and like feel as though they're a part of it, right?
Yeah.
And so like, Kenny always did an amazing job of that, and I always made it a point to make sure that like I always allow people to feel as though they're a part of this and to be a part of it, to be and to know that like every fractal has a piece of this puzzle, you know.
Definitely. So, you know, prophecy is it's not that old, you know, obviously, as we mentioned, but what's one of your favorite memories, you know, in prophecy's had so far?
We've had some.
I got tons.
Yeah, like White Mountain Warrior camps. That's like, I mean, it's an extension of prophecy, right? It's my camp system, and so I do like outdoor camps where I get as many kids as I can to just camp out in tents, and we put them through 4 days of the last 2 years. It's been 4 days, four workouts a day for 4 days straight. That's fun, man. That's like, I had this past year, I had Eric Morrill come in, who's the coach at Cal Baptist. Mia Macalusa, Sophia Macalusa, we're both world team members for our women's representees. Nadir was there. Caleb Richardson, who wrestled at UPenn, multi-time wrestled at Blair Academy. Victor Jesus, 2-time JUCO national champ. Who else was there? My buddy Trevor Gilmet. He's not a wrestler, but he does an amazing job like with outdoor work, and he comes in and helps me run that whole thing. And then another big name who I work real closely with is Frank Mahoney out of New England Gold. He's just an amazing dude. He's just so solid. He comes in and really helps me structure that thing up, and he's like you know, everyone's favorite dad. You know, he's just like always there for him. You know, he do whatever you need him to do. He's very solid energy, never off. And so, dude, like, having all the college kids come out for that, and like they were down in the trenches with the kids camping out. We were all staying up in, like, we had this house where we all stayed at. You know, you'd walk around back, and it was about a half-mile walk. All the kids would be tented out over there. We'd wake them up at 6 a.m. We'd run them over to the field house. That was, you know, everything we did within that 4 days was probably like, you know, I mean, I'm really like, it's all fun though, bro. Everything's, if you come in with fresh energy, every day is brand new, right? And so like, I've had some definite highs where I'm like, this is an amazing moment, but I've definitely had some, you know, it's all fun. It's all, because if you look at it through the right lens, everything's growth, everything's, you know, to learn from. So I'd say the camp systems, you know, I'd say the camps. We have some fun camps, bro.
I'm curious, you do that in New York? I mean, not New York, New Hampshire.
Yep. Perfect place for it. You got the mountains, you got all the access we need to the wrestling rooms and stuff. So we run that right up at campus, right in Henniker.
Oh, okay.
Yep. It's cool. It's a cool setup. We have trails that legit lead from the field that we sleep on through the woods all the way to campus. So you don't even have to touch the road, you know, so it's very safe. You know, you have like your separation to where like you feel like, you know, you can get a good night's rest, then come back over for your workout. But it's a really cool setup. You go into the river, we do some, you know, we have some fun, man. Go get ice cream, hike the mountains.
Yeah, it sounds like, you know, if I was in high school, you know, I'd want to do that. You know, a camping trip with friends, that, you know, wrestling practice, all that.
Yo. So, and just the personnel that we bring in for it, it's an amazing thing. You know, there's some really, really fun people to be around. Bexod even came in this year, Abdur Rachmanov, and he's a 2-time world medalist.
Yeah.
He was our big headliner and Olympic medalist and beat Jordan Burroughs at one point. So it's just, you know, it's cool to be able to now reference these guys and build with them, right? They're all coming back. How do we make this better? How do we make it, you know, more for the kids and continue to just trend it in this direction while still getting done what we want to get done, you know? Mm-hmm. So I'd say that it probably takes the helm for being my best memory as a coach so far with prophecy.
All right, Zach, is there anything else you want to talk about?
No, man. I mean, I just I want to continue to see this area grow. For athletes out there, just continue to support these local events. The more that you can get to these local events and
Oh,
support
speak
bigger
quickly of
opportunities.
local events too, aren't you? What's this New England? We'll talk about this real quick. This New England Fall Classic that I've seen you post about. Why don't you talk a little bit about that if you got
Yeah,
the.
so Fall Classic is that was the Fall Classic was September. Now we got the this little Halloween event coming
Yeah,
up.
yeah, yeah. Referees in costumes, I see.
Yeah. So we're gonna do referees in costumes. Shout out to Kakavis and Boston Bob. They're gonna do that with a smile on their face. They're awesome people, man. And like just being able to grow with the referees as well, and like really that's a whole different culture of our sport, right? That I don't feel like gets enough light shined on it. Those guys are amazing people, and they dedicate a lot and sacrifice a lot of their time to giving kids opportunities.
Think about it, they just get yelled at most of the time too, you know?
Honestly.
They take it.
So I try to take care of them and like always make sure they're getting paid the best I can, and I get them a sandwich, which is a little different. Now we got the costumes coming in, but yeah, that replaces the hammer quest that I had, which was specifically for youth. I wanted to get high school involved, so I moved it up 3 weeks before the quest happened, and so we can still have the high school demographic compete. It's going to be a good little showcased event, same place that we typically have them, in and out, a lot of good competition. See what we can, see what kind of fun we can have right before season starts. But like the goal is to get these kids like anywhere from like 10 to 15 matches before season, right? Competitive bouts, just so that they can get that first, get the cobwebs off, and
So they're not walking in with rust on them,
100%, bro, 100%. So yeah, I mean, otherwise, man, just that's happening. A lot of good things are happening in this community. I think JWU's doing some good things right now for D3 programs. I've seen them, they're obviously always super active and trying to raise the bar. We're pushing a hard veal over at New England College. Obviously, Castleton has their thing going on up in Vermont. They're kind of out of the mix, but they're in the mix. You know what I mean? Like Vermont's like there, but it's kind of,
That's
it's
just
like
Vermont, though, not necessarily Castleton,
no, exactly. It's just like Vermont, right? But I think like they're doing some really good things over there. They got a lot of good guys coming in constantly from New York. So yeah, the D3 games getting really fun, man, and I'm having fun with that. And now it's just about adding to the depth and creating more opportunities and pipelines for these kids to go become who they want to be in the sport.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's about all I got, brother.
All right, man. It was great talking to you, bro.
Yeah, likewise, man. I really had fun here, and I'm excited for what's to come out of this, man. So
Yeah.
good luck to your event too, and
Yeah,
definitely to the community. Go support that. The more spectators, even if you're not competing in that, be a spectator. Bring a friend. Bring somebody who doesn't wrestle. That's a big deal to have our best talent showcased here in New England. Under one roof.
It'd be a great day. I'm really.
Yeah, I feel good energy behind it. So tip of the cap to you guys for putting that together, and let's just keep growing, bro.
Appreciate it, Zach.